If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome to Why Write, and I am Angela Grout, the host of the show, and this is the 100th episode, which is really exciting to think that I've been sitting here for 100 different interviews, and interviewed definitely more than 100 people. And today, hopefully on television when they're watching this, they can see that we have a live studio audience, which is really fun to be able to make eye contact with people instead of just looking at a timer. Usually all I see is a big timer that tells me how much time is left. And at the beginning of the show, when my guest comes in, I'm letting them know, at what time in the show I'm going to start wrapping it up so that we can make the 30-minute mark. However, with this 100th episode, we're going to be here for 100 minutes. Just kidding. But I was thinking I would love to go over my favorite 100 episodes of Why Write. But I don't have to do that because I can just send you to the YouTube channel and you can look at all 100 episodes and you can see all of them because they're all my favorites. But what I will tell you is doing a podcast definitely takes planning. And one of the things with doing a podcast, and for me, because I was a florist for so many years, I think it's helped seasoned me to be able to prepare for the what if. Because you never know if something will happen. Thankfully, I have a wonderful technical producer, Les, who you've just met. So I don't have to worry about the filming, the editing, the sound. He takes care of all that for me. But I do have to make sure I plan for my guests. I get their introductions, their bios for how I'm going to introduce them. Have some questions available, which, both the guests and I have agreed upon. Sometimes advanced, sometimes not, just to have on the show. But, in 100 episodes, I have to tell you that there are 3 episodes that kind of stand out to me and that taught me lessons. One is episode 59, which was an episode where my guest didn't show up. And we were texting saying, what's wrong? And then come to find out, we found out what was happening. And here I'm sitting in the studio and I have no guest. And it just so happened that I had a friend coming through the studio that day and we started, he popped in to say hello and we ended up spontaneously saying, hey, let's turn this episode around and he'll interview Angela. So it was one of those last minute, okay, you got to think on your feet. And, it was a fun thing, but it was a little panicking, that I didn't have a guess. What was I going to do? Then on episode 41, I booked 2 guests at the same time. I don't know how it happened. I mean, sometimes you just make mistakes like that. And they both showed up. And I'm like, I can only kind of do one. Thankfully, again, less accommodated. We did 1 episode right after the other episode. However, this is where I had to think on my feet and say, I'm doing 2 episodes in one day, but I don't want to wear the same outfit. Because, it's going to be a week apart. So thankfully, I had a shirt on with a jacket, so I zipped up the jacket for the first interview and then took off the jacket for the second interview, put my hair in a little different position. So those are like, just kind of little fun things that, happened. And then there was the time that I took the show on the road by myself. And Les gave me all the equipment. I went to the International Women's Writers Guild. They had a women's conference in Philadelphia. And while I was there, I was able to interview, I believe it was 9 different writers from around the world. So I got to do 9 different episodes. So I had to set up my own remote studio. And in doing that, I learned that you have to be aware of background noise. So there was this cute little hallway, and I thought, oh, we'll do it right here. It's a little dead-end hallway, it'll be nice and quiet. I set up everything. And we started the interview, forgetting that the elevator was there. Ding! Ding! And I said, oh, okay, I guess we're not doing it here, so we had to relocate. So doing these 100 episodes, I've learned a lot. I've made, some quick change adjustments where it needs to be. And now for this 100th episode, which again is here at the Agawam Senior Center on the community stage, right down the hall from Studio 954, where I usually do my show, is, where I get to have live people in the audience to watch this show. And because it's the 100th, it won't be 100 minutes, but it will be a little bit longer because I'm going to take this opportunity to have two guests today. So the day that I, planned, unfortunately booked two people at the same time, I wasn't able to accommodate that, but today I can. So I'm excited to announce the first guest, who is a returning guest to the show, and his name is G. Michael Dobbs, and a lot of you may or may not recognize his name. He's been a reporter for many, many years in the Western Mass area. I prepared some notes for this, but I want to specify, go to episode 82, because that is where you'll see the full episode of Michael and I talking about not only what he does as a journalist, but all of the books that he's written. But today I have him on because he has written a very cool book. So I want to introduce Michael Dobbs, G. Michael Dobbs here. And it's the 100th episode. So we are here to talk about how he wrote a 100-chapter book. And each tell us about each chapter.
Okay. Any of you are writers? Okay. One thing about writing is planning. And this is the ultimate planner, anal retentive personality book challenge. And I will challenge each and every one of you tonight if you can do this, because that's how I got into this. Just so you know, I was at Reminder Publishing for nearly 25 years. I was the executive editor. Currently, I do work on Focus Springfield, which is the Springfield equivalent to this public access television station. I do a show called Government Matters. I'm doing a podcast called The Ink-Stained Wretch. Right now it's on hiatus. It's going to be coming back very shortly, and it's available on all platforms. So I'm retired, but I keep very busy.
I'm retired too. I get retired every day.
Ah.
But I am a retired florist now, so
Okay.
That's what we do, is we stay extra busy.
So I got a pal named Joseph Citro. And Joe is a very accomplished writer. Look up Joseph Citro wherever you want, wherever you buy books on the internet. And you're going to find a whole bunch of horror novels that he's written, which I highly recommend. He's reissuing all of them. Some of them have gone out of print. And he also is known as, in his home state of Vermont, as the Bard of the Bazaar. So Joe collects stories about hauntings, disappearances, weird historical facts, Bigfoot, the Lake Champlain monster, the Bennington Triangle. And Joe is not, quote unquote, a paranormal investigator. Joe is a writer. And he goes out and he talks to people and he does a lot of research. And Joe one day says to me, Dobbs, I got this challenge for you. I said, what is it, Joe? I want you to write a book, 100 chapters. Each chapter is 100 words. Okay? Not 99, not 101, 100 words, 100 chapters. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I thought, what the hell can I write about? Well, I'm a nonfiction writer, which I have learned is not a worthy addition in the writer's world. We're sort of like discounted behind the novelists and the poets and people like that. But that's okay. That's okay. So I said, obviously I'm not going to do nonfiction. I'll do nonfiction. I can't do fiction. So I thought, why don't I write an advice book? Everybody writes advice books. Try to better your personality or your relationships. Well, I don't know anything about that. I do know about the media. My first paycheck in the media was in 1975. So I've been doing this, geez, that's like 50 years this year. Wow, it just occurred to me.
It's half of the podcast episode.
It just occurred to me.
50 years.
50
Congratulations.
Years. Yes, and I don't know how to do it because I'm just 39. But the bottom line is that I'll write about my path in media, and I'll set it up, and then how I became a journalist, and then I will conclude with advice. Because there's a lot of things they teach you in college and journalism programs or media programs, but there's a lot you don't.
There's a lot that he had to write about when this is 100 things that he didn't learn in journalism school that he now has learned. So if you're looking to be a journalist, you don't even need to go to college. If you read his book, you'll learn everything.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
So I went to UMass, and we had a great journalism professor named Ralph Whitehead. Worked for the Chicago newspapers. Great guy. And here's the advice he gave to us. Number one, when you're at a press conference, if a competing reporter drops his pen or pencil, kick it across the room. Number two, when you have to go to the rewrite man. Now, I realize that probably none of you have worked in journalism, so the rewrite guy is, you're at a press conference, you're trying to meet a deadline, you go to a telephone and you dictate the story to the rewrite person who's banging it out on the old manual typewriter. I miss manual typewriters. Banging it out on the old
Does this still
typewriter.
happen today, though, like that? I can't imagine. And now I feel like people would just dictate it into their phone or text it or
Well,
something.
no, what happens now is they're made to like for the people who write for Mass Live, they're made to write it and post it without it being edited. And then someone figures out that they misspelled stuff or got stuff wrong.
The
and
audience.
They revise it. So Ralph says, when you head to that payphone, there's a young woman here. Do you know what a payphone is? Okay, I'm just double checking. Use this. Use your hockey elbow. You want to get that other reporter away from that payphone. Wow. The third thing he taught us was your most important interviews will be done in bars. Here's the deal. You give them enough drinks, they get a little lubricated, a little loose. And that's when you pull out the pen and pencil and start asking
Wow,
questions.
that's true. I know this for a fact.
Well, I can tell you there have been 3 times I've interviewed someone in a bar, and the only reason I did that is that I wanted a landmark in downtown Springfield. I said, meet me at Theodore's. Okay? And no one ever drank. I didn't drink. No, I'm working. I'm not going to drink when I'm working. But, so that's the advice I got. So this advice is not that severe, but it is about things that they don't tell you about. Should I give a couple examples?
I was just going to say, do you want me to read a few? But yeah, I mean, I think it's just so fascinating to me. And when he came on the last show, we didn't really talk about this book. But as soon as I thought about the 100th podcast, all I thought about was writing 100 words for 100 chapters. And it's something, I mean, I have taken on the challenge, not for 100 chapters, but I've done flash fictions where I'll enter something. And usually they'll say like 100, it has to be 100 words exactly, you know, and it's a challenge, you know, especially for me, because I'm wordy. Wordy.
There's, before I give you a couple examples, here's how you do it, okay? First of all, this would have been impossible with a typewriter. I'm sorry, to count out each word on that piece of paper, you know, because inevitably you're going to forget where you're at, you know. There's a distraction, you got to recount. So once you learn what 100 words sort of looks like, always add a couple more adjectives and adverbs than you need. Because if you're going to cut something, cut an adjective or an adverb. Cut a descriptor. It's far easier to front load in a couple things that you really sort of think you're going to cut out. And that's a secret. And you know, we all write on computers, everyone's got word count, and so the book is actually technologically able. You're able to do this. So I'm standing in Chicopee at a park one spring morning. It was Mayor Koss was saying some blather. No disrespect to Rich Koss. It's just when you've been in the business as long as I am, it's sometimes. So anyway, I'm standing there, and I realize that standing next to me is this very tall, very blonde young woman. She was a weather forecaster at the time at TV 22, and obviously she had been pressed into reporting duty that day. Now, TV people tend to look at newspaper people as sort of modified lepers. They don't really talk to us much. That's okay. we're the ones who are going to get it right. Yeah, I'm throwing shade.
The writer.
Yes, I'm throwing shade. So I notice her shoulder, I'm 5'10" on a good day. Her shoulder is like here next to mine. Okay. So the mayor starts talking and taking notes, and I just noticed that her shoulder is like here next to mine. And I'm going, what's going on? So I looked down at her feet. She had, to match her blood red cocktail dress, she was wearing blood red stiletto heels. And the heels were now sunk all the way to the bottom of the shoe in the moist
And she's
spring
still this
soil.
tall.
Well, she was shrinking.
Oh.
She was shrinking. And I'm just like, so that's one of the stories. Here's the lesson. If you're going to do TV, you know, okay, dress appropriately according to what the news director says you got to dress. Don't worry about your shoes. They're never going to shoot your shoes. You're never
Yeah,
going
wear
to be,
sneakers.
You're never going to be in a shot where your shoes are visible. A good friend of mine is a guy named Ray Herschel, which I'm sure that some of you probably have heard of since he was on television for 50 freaking years in this market. And one day I'm at a construction site, and hey, Ray, hey, Dobbs. I said, Ray, I love your shoes, man. He had some sort of LL Bean moccasin waterproofed traction heel thing.
Well, he never knows where he's going to go reporting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the day, you don't know where you're going to be assigned.
Yeah.
So, but no one in just journalism school would say, hey, wear sensible shoes.
Absolutely. As a florist, I wore black every day because I never knew where I was going during that day. Was I making a delivery to the hospital, to the funeral home, to a wedding?
Right.
I just wanted to be able to go to anything.
Yeah. Another example from the book. Nobody gets taught how to take notes. When you go to journalism school, the assumption is that you already know how to take notes because of high school. Mm. I am not sure if that is a good assumption, to be perfectly frank. Especially taking notes in a high school class is a lot different than standing there with the governor. Okay? So the thing I've learned is that we all develop our own note-taking techniques. My mom was a secretary, and she still had her shorthand books, and she told me in college, you should learn shorthand. Well, being stupid, which I remain to this day, I didn't do that. And at age 71, I wish I knew shorthand. That would have made a lot different. But you develop your own kind of shorthand. But again,
Yes.
no one teaches you how to do this. There was a long-term reporter in Chicopee for the Republican named Pam Metaxas, who's no longer with us. Pam had yellow legal pads, and she wrote with a Sharpie.
Ooh.
Back in the day where Sharpies bled through everything, you know? That's how she took notes. That was her technique. And she literally, I would watch her. She'd scrawl like 4 or 5 words on a sheet, flip it, scrawl more, flip it. She went through hundreds, thousands of legal pads. But that was her technique. Perfectly valid because she developed it and it worked for her. But again, something they never teach you in journalism school.
I feel like you're just giving me a huge crash course on journalism school, especially for, interviewing and reporting, being a reporter. When we talked about this on the episode that you were on, is the fact that he has interviewed thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, including very famous people. So the fact that, he can be here to share what's worked for him and what he's learned is something that is so beneficial to me. And this is kind of why I have my show, not just to benefit me, but to benefit all of us. Because as a writer, I always, would want to, well, I still want to learn how to do things. And for me, there's no better way to learn than from someone who's doing it.
Well, interviewing is something that nobody ever taught any of us. It was, you're going to go out to this assignment, you're going to talk to people. That's an interview.
Yeah.
And there are ways of doing it. There's ways, and it all. Did any of you ever watch Larry King?
Yeah.
Okay. Show of hands, Okay. Thank you. Larry King believed in never doing any real research. He probably had a paragraph or two handed to him by a producer, and he just winged it. His premise was, he wanted to be as ignorant as his audience. I don't like that. So when I interview someone, I do the research, and I also understand why they're there. Because most times when you interview, quote unquote, a celebrity, you're doing it because they want to sell something. They have a new book, a new movie, a new TV show, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the contract, the unspoken contract, is that you give them what they want. Let me ask you about the new movie. And then they're going to give you what you want, which is your questions that may not necessarily have to do with the reason they're there. Mm-hmm. So, but I have, okay, so this will be quick.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to it.
Okay, so I get to interview Clayton Moore. Now, Clayton Moore was an actor who was in Hollywood from about 1938 on. He was a part of a trapeze acts and circus. And very good-looking guy, comes to Hollywood, has a career, gets interrupted by World War II, gets out, resumes the career, and he answers an audition for a TV show in 1949 called The Lone Ranger. So some of you are old enough to have watched that show, some of you aren't.
Do we have pen?
So I get Clayton Moore on the line, and I don't start with The Lone Ranger. I start with, what was it like breaking into Hollywood and doing The Son of Monte Cristo? And there was a pause. And then I ask him about other questions, about working at Republic Studios. I know this guy has answered every freaking question imaginable about the Lone Ranger for the past 35, 40 years. So let's talk about other things that people don't talk about. Then I get to the Lone Ranger stuff. But he pays me the ultimate compliment. He says to me, this is when I was doing talk radio on WREB in Holyoke in the 1980s. He says, "You've actually researched my career." And the way he said it, let me know that other interview people had not. So knowing something ahead of time, going a little bit away from that topic that they want to talk about, but make sure you get there, that's how I do it. I'm going to be doing an interview for my podcast with Ed Begley Jr., the actor, whose sister lives in Springfield, has for years, Aline Curto. She used to be on the school committee. And I just met Ed. He was in Springfield at a book signing. Agreed to do my little podcast. Very nice guy. And so I'll be doing a deep dive into some of the stuff that normally they don't talk to him about. I know I got to talk to him about environmental stuff because he's a huge environmentalist. But
see, this is why I like having you on the show, because as much as like you're saying, like, okay, yes, every guest I have on the show is marketing something. We're talking about this book, which the books will be available for sale today after the show with all of us. But, you're marketing this, but I'm not necessarily, we are asking what's in that book, but the story of like why you wrote it is fascinating, and the reason why you felt like, this is a fun project to do. Those are the things that I love hearing about, because it just shows the passion behind what you're doing. And then when you're sharing all these different ways that, you've learned in the shortcuts, I'm going to say shortcuts, but what you've learned through actually doing things are the things that, people want to learn. And, when someone's trying to write a book or trying to, make a movie or a play or, get a job, meet people, whatever, the fact that they can ask someone or listen to someone like you share how you've done it, oh yeah, you're at a book signing and you're like, hey, I have a podcast. Do you want to come on it? These things, these casual conversations that, some people make such a big deal about and they get so stressed over, and it's like, what, just step back and be in the moment. And
oh yeah, and if you're interviewing a celebrity,
well, I am right now with you.
No, I'm not a celebrity.
Then I got Judy Cosby coming, a bigger celebrity too. So.
I'm just an old writer, media guy. That's all I am. But when you're interviewing someone whose work you admire, a lot of times, well, I just come right out and say it as I begin the interview. I'm a big fan of yours, and then I prove it. I interviewed Maureen O'Hara. Again, Maureen O'Hara was an incredibly popular actress from the 1930s into the 1960s. Irish, red hair, queen of Technicolor in the 1940s. And I interviewed her. The first thing I said is, I've had a crush on you since I was 12 years old.
Oh,
That's called an icebreaker.
yeah.
Then I said to her, I don't think you ever got the respect that you should have gotten in Hollywood.
And then she admired you. Said, "Thank you."
And she says, you're absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've ever seen a Maureen O'Hara movie, she did a lot of films with John Wayne. She did a ton of stuff. It's just, I got a chance to interview Bill Cosby before all of the fertilizer hit the ventilation system. And I said to him at the beginning, number one, I prepped. He likes to be called Dr. Cosby because he has a PhD from UMass. So I avoided a trap. So I said, Dr. Cosby, before we start, I mean, I started listening to your comedy albums when I was in the 6th grade. And he says, then this is going to be a lot easier for the both of us. And I just said, tell me about how you started out. 45 minutes later, we're still talking. It was a great interview. And of course, now everyone goes, well, I'm not going to read that in your book because...
Well, and his book is called The 40 Years of Interviews.
It's 15 minutes with.
15 minutes with over 100 different people. So that book is not here this evening, but it is available, and I'm going to put the links on the show so that people can get those.
Thank you.
Along with, the memoirs of the ink-stained red, which is you, and the links to your podcast, because,
Thank you.
I think, that you're a fascinating and amazing man, and I'm so grateful that you were able to come on to the 100th episode to share
I deeply appreciate
some of the 100 things you've
opportunity.
learned.
Deeply appreciate that.
Well, let's thank Michael Dobbs for
Thank you
coming
very
on.
much.
And Judy Cobbs is my next guest. She is a resident here in Agawam. She, again, is a returning guest. She was on episode 12, so very early on. She's the first dozen there. We discussed her book, Threads, and we teased on that episode about an upcoming mystery series that she was writing. And she has written the series, so we're going to talk about this because, as many of you know, I've also written a mystery called April Rain, and during the process of her writing her novel, we kind of chat a little, so I'm interested to have a bigger conversation with her and find out about her book, to tell you about it. And her and I are going to talk about talking muses. So let's welcome to the podcast, Judy Cosby. What are you doing?
I wanted to give
Oh my
you
gosh, look how adorable this is.
congratulations on your
It's a
100th
candle.
episode.
It says, "Why right?" Oh, I love the little sticker on it. Thank you. Ooh, it's the cinnamon.
Yes.
That cinnamon is good for your stress and
That's right.
so many things that just to kind of center
bring
you.
out a muse or not?
Yeah, oh, it'll bring out a muse, all right. So, congratulations. I'm going to slide Michael's book over here because I want you to take out this series that you wrote. She's got 2 books that she wrote under 2 years, right? It took less than 2 years to do both of them.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, talk about dedication and fast writing. But as I know, when you have this muse that comes to you, it kind of directs you more than you can direct the story.
That's correct.
So this is, well, I'll let you talk about the attachment and the entrapment. And I know, like, first you were entrapped. That's what muses do. They trap you. And then you become and you get very attached to them.
Yes.
So,
Oh my God, that's good.
so is that why that those titles are? Because it is. I'm telling you, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and Muse will be telling me things, and I'm just feeling like trapped. Like, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to write this down, and then slowly we develop this friendship, and now I'm very attached to them.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was really afraid originally to delve into this because I was a nonfiction writer.
Yeah.
And I had established a fan base. So to jump a genre and then possibly lose that fan base if it isn't good was really kind
Yeah,
of frightening.
and your threads, the book is more, I'm going to say, spiritual nature. I mean, it's,
Yes.
about talking about the threads of our life and how things are woven in, and we see our little God winks and
Absolutely.
things like that.
And just having you look at life differently than possibly negatively, facing challenges differently. So I came up with this idea that I wanted to write this paranormal mystery, and so I started to delve into it. I'm very fortunate. I have a great team of support around me. For example, I have a content editor that helped me with my previous books,
That's nice.
as well as a great proofer.
Yeah.
So when I decided to do this, I forwarded the manuscript to my editor, and I said, "What do you think about me?"
Done
Yeah.
manuscript.
Yes.
Okay.
I wrote it out. I thought it was great. And she went, "Okay, we got to work on this because you're writing fiction now, and fiction is very different than nonfiction." I had to work on my dialogue. I had a very tight dialogue. I had to learn, how to write that. The other part of it is you had to choose a voice, first, second, or third. I had first in the beginning, second in the middle, third at the end. So she was really just honing this in. And once I got through the mechanics of it, which was, I almost walked away defeated, like, oh, this is beyond me.
From the editing part or from the
just
story
from,
part?
Like, maybe
Okay.
I'm not cut out for
Yeah,
this. Maybe this is not for me.
Yeah, I hear
but
you.
I loved my storyline, and so I said I'm going to stick it out. So she sent me lessons to learn. She told me about dialogue, which she taught me a little thing that I thought was kind of cool. I don't know if you've ever done this. She said, I have an office, a home office that has a door, thank God, that you can close so no one can hear what goes on in there. And I
Close the outside world
created
out.
this environment where it's just a lot of antiques, a lot of things that bring out, different ideas. And she said, when you take your character, dress like them, or speak like them. So when you're typing,
You're doing like
actually-
method acting,
right.
like how actors
so
do it.
So I have a caretaker of a cemetery that's a big part of my books, and his name is Marty Evans.
So how are you dressing?
Well, he wears a Stetson. I don't wear a Stetson, but I'll just kind of like fake that I have a hat.
Did you
on.
write in a cemetery?
I did not write in a cemetery, but I tour cemeteries.
Okay.
Yes,
I could
very
see
old
myself
ones,
doing that,
yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to sit here in the
Yeah,
cemetery and be
I don't know
him.
if I could do that. Well, I guess I could.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of interesting. But, I just learned how to write better dialogue by really getting into the character, which, it's like having like this split personality in this room where you're talking different people. But it really...
This is why I love talking to writers, because it makes me feel normal.
It is
when
a
I
very
say to
lonely,
people,
weird
I'm
thing.
talking to other people right now. They're like,
And you do.
okay, here's
You
a
have
number
to.
for a therapist. I'm like, no, really. Like, my muse is telling me I need to make a note.
Yeah, and you do. I make notes up by my bed, and so and people ask me, where did you come up with the character Eliza Gray?
Eliza, yeah.
And I kind of created her as this, gifted person who is struggling with this gift, wants to hide it, but ultimately the story unfolds where she has to face it and help solve a past mystery. And as she's doing this, I had to come up with a name, and everybody says, where did you come up with Eliza Gray? And I mean this. I was typing the story, and it was if she literally came in the room, sat down, and said, I'm Eliza. There was never a question about what are you going to do with my name or what she was Eliza Gray from the minute I conceived her in my head.
That's awesome.
And so that's never changed. It was just she became real.
That's
to me
awesome.
When I wrote
Yeah,
it.
I mean, the character definitely resonates with me, because I do know, like, from a personal thing, like that feeling of, and I think writers can resonate with this, is you feel like you have to tell the story. But as she struggles telling the story, and she is fearful she could maybe lose her life telling
Right.
the story, and, it's something that I really understand, because as I wrote April Rain, I was like, oh my gosh, if there's a real murderer out there and he knows what that I know what he did, he's going to come after me. And, it's like, if I tell the story and it's, goes one way or another,
Right.
will she survive,
Right.
And so I definitely resonate with her of, just how she went about trying to, figure it all out.
Right.
And then I think
journey.
about the writer writing that, and that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, there's always the story behind April Rain, you know, the story behind the attachment, the story behind the entrapment.
There is. Well, do you, like, for example, I research a lot, you know, because there's a lot of past. I do historical fiction.
At like 2 a.m. on your phone, under the covers.
Well, I'm always like, what if the FBI ever looked at my search engine? Because they would be like, where is this woman going?
Oh, yeah. I
I
had researched transporting a dead body over state lines.
Yeah, how does this work? You know, and so you have to Google it, so to speak. And so I always laugh to myself, oh my gosh, I hope no one's watching this right now. But, you know, you want to make it authentic. And that was the main goal of these stories because, again, I had the fan base from the Thread series that when I was venturing out of my genre and changing it up, I was really afraid that if it wasn't good, I would lose credibility with what I had already done. So
and you didn't. So congratulations.
I worked really hard on it to really make it authentic.
So from a writer's point of view, I want to know, like, did you come up with an outline first for it, and did you handwrite or do you type?
I type,
Okay.
although I have a lot of notes and I have a whiteboard.
Okay.
And my whiteboard is just for timelines.
Okay.
But
so you create your timeline before you're writing?
So yes and no.
Firing questions at you.
So with The Attachment, my first book, I had the idea. And again, when it was new and exciting and I was like, I want to try this, I had no plan. Like I knew where I was going, but literally the book took me to where it led. It just did. I didn't have a plan. When I hit the entrapment, I actually planned it out. I actually wrote out a timeline with each chapter, so I had a designated idea of where I was going with it. And I think they probably are two very different books based on that. You know, I don't. People love them both, but they'll always go, oh, I think you found your groove on the entrapment.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, because they probably see a more concise story where, well, it's a little more chronological.
Well, you know, the other thing is, I think with the attachment, I had to introduce the characters, I had to introduce the storyline. So I got that out of the way with the entrapment because it's just it's the second in the series. So I think it was an easier flow. I had my characters down for the most part.
And you had the same editor and the same proofreader for it, so they followed the storyline too.
Correct.
Did they have to reintroduce anything or remind your readers of things at certain points?
You know, that was advised that I just touch, you know, you don't want to drone it on because these are people who are, if they're buying the second one, they've already read the first one. You don't want to make it boring. But I touch base on, like, you go back a little just to, like, talk about the previous murder, the previous situations, and you kind of bring that forward. You know, when I solved the Honor Brown mystery, you know, like you talk about it in your second book, but you're not really droning on about it. And that's how I'm moving forward to the third one.
I was just going to say, what's happening now? How far are you into the third?
So I pretty much have an outline of the third, and I am currently, I'm probably 6 chapters in right now. So I don't think it's going to be finished this year, which was, we talked about deadlines and goals. I don't see that happening.
Be gentle with your deadlines. Be very gentle. I was telling her before the show that I went to this conference and one was saying how, everybody has different goals in life. You have to be very gentle with how you take care of them and, come up with a 10 lists, things you want to do. And, you have to forgive yourself if you don't do it. And I'm listening to this voice talking like this, and in my head I'm going, the heck is she talking about? I'm like, I'm not coming up with a 10-year gentle bucket list. I'm coming up with a 3-year aggressive goal list. That's it. If I don't do this in 3 years, I'm not doing it.
That's how I got the 2 books out.
And I think,
I just was
we
really
have to be
aggressive
motivated.
about it.
You have to be aggressive. You have to be dedicated.
Yeah.
And, you have to find your comfortable spot to write. And and it does have to do with where you're writing and the environment you're writing in.
Absolutely.
But the way you're writing, what are you going to do, first person, second person, I mean, those are all things that
show versus tell, and
Yeah,
just like getting
and-
all these different things
and-
that I didn't have to do with the
and
first
your
series.
education, you majored in writing, right, in school.
No, I did not. Yes, I know, I did not at all.
So that's the thing is, it's not like we went to school to learn all of this. We're learning on our own.
learning on
I mean,
our own.
thankfully, we have people like, Michael Dobbs that we can learn from, who did go to school and can teach us.
Right, and you do, you go on websites and you learn from different webinars and things, and you get a taste for what other people can give you for advice, and you take that. My editor, she saved me so many times with just saying to me, now that you're going to write fiction, so are you going to be a cozy mystery? Are you going to be a thriller? Are you going to be a suspense? And I'm like, no, I'm just making a paranormal mystery story.
Right.
And she's like, no, you need to hone that in. And she had said to me at one point, I think you need a sidekick in this. And I'm thinking, well, she's got a friend, she's got a husband, why do I need a sidekick? And she goes, I just think you need something extra. And for 3 days, I sat there going, what kind of sidekick am I going to have? And then I was typing, and my great
story.
my great Pyrenees came in and shoved the door open and kind of sat down and looked at me. And I thought to myself, well, I need a break. And I, pet him, rubbed his belly, and he walked out of the room. About maybe 2 minutes later, he came back in, smacked me on the leg, let's go out. And I thought to myself, why does a sidekick have to be human?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I do a dog? So it became, I made, her sidekick a dog, and he has abilities. He can see, he's not like telling her, there's ghosts in the room, but he is aware that she's in danger, and he becomes her protector. So he elevates her character. He elevated a part of her that I didn't even consider, was just the fact that she became so attached to this dog.
So when you're writing like the dog into the story, do you? I do this thing where if I'm introducing a new character, I'll sit down as the writer and interview this character, them to find out how they see their role, what they're doing like that first person monologue from them. Did you ever do anything like that with any of your characters? Say yes. No.
Okay. Well,
No, I'm kidding. Make me feel normal.
Well, you're normal.
No, I know.
You're very that part.
It is.
I think it's all a personal journey. It's like when I think of my characters, I don't know how they develop. Like they're just there. Mm-hmm. There's things outside of the characters. Like one day I was walking my dogs in the woods, and it was a real event. I was walking them, and all these crows came out of nowhere. Like I'm talking 50 crows, and like one landed and another landed and another landed. They were all squawking, and my dogs, I have two, they were barking, and all of a sudden I went, oh, wouldn't that be a cool scene in the book? So I ran home, and I'm like typing it in the book to quickly add it
and
in.
it probably ends up like foreshadowing something. Who
Yeah,
knows?
it
When you're looking
actually
at
was
the
the
symbolism
coolest.
of things.
Right. Well, that was it.
Yeah.
It was the symbolism.
Yeah.
So,
And we do put things that happen in our life in these books.
Right. So that, there's all kinds of things that I think bring the characters or the situations, exterior things that come into play.
So what's your favorite part about writing? Holding the finished copy.
Well, yeah, holding the finished copy and seeing it doing well on Amazon. No, I'm kidding. It's more about, I think, the process. I'm a better writer in the morning, early in the morning. So when I know I have the day to myself and I can write and I can close myself in, I love going into another world. The fictional town is Coventry by the Sea. And to be honest with you, I've set my office as if I'm living
in Coventry
by the Sea. And I close my door, and for that time frame, Eliza can eat any pastry she wants. And she can go walk on the beach if she needs a break. She has all these things in her life. A friend that's ready for her anytime she needs to, express a problem. And so I love that world. And, and then I come out and I'm happy, to be in my little
It's
Agawam
beautiful.
world.
It's definitely like, I'm going to call it method writing because, you are putting yourself the way those method actors do, putting it in, being like that. I don't know if I could have done that because, writing it sometimes can get really scary.
Oh, it can.
And you're like, oh gosh, I don't, and I've fought with this and another story I have, just like, I don't want to write that kind of scene. Like, I don't want to write a rape scene. I don't want to write a murder scene. Like, that's, I don't want that coming out of me. But then you realize it's not really coming out of you, it's coming through you.
Truthfully, there are scenes I just won't do. That's me, and I stress that to everybody. That there's just things I'll only go so far.
Yeah.
For me, I just can't.
Yeah, I had one scene where I wrote one time and I ripped it into a million pieces and then I burned it.
Did you?
like
cathartic.
It was very. I was like, get out! I'm not doing that ever again. What was that? No. So
yeah.
Well, so we're gonna look forward to the third in the series.
Yes.
Will there
Probably
be more?
Like January. So my goal is to do 5.
Okay.
That's my goal. We talk about goals. Yeah. I would love to do 5, and as long as I can do 5 where I elevated each book, I don't want to get redundant. I don't want anybody to ever read them and say, "Oh, I know how this is going to go." So my goal is 5, and then I'm going to be a grandmother in just a few weeks, and so I would love to also maybe do a child's book someday. Again, like you got to stay focused where you are and then jump to another thing. So that will be further down the road. But
we have all these pots simmering on our stove and say, okay,
exactly.
we're going to get to that one,
Yeah.
and we'll get to it
That's
because
right.
it's on there. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the candle. Thank you for coming on and being a guest again.
I know, I'm very excited
because
about
that episode, and I repeat it again. I think it
12.
was 12. Thank you. I was like, dozen. The episode 12, we did start talking about this, and now here that was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago, and it's just
and
crazy.
it wasn't even it was started, but it wasn't done, and now you've done book 1 and book 2, so it's a great follow-up. So watch episode 12 and then come back and watch episode 100.
Congratulations.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you for coming to join us on this 100th episode. If for those of you who have watched the show, and again, it's on YouTube, so I hope you have subscribed so that you can watch them. It's free, and it's also streaming on all the other channels. And of course, here in Agawam, it's on channel 15 on Wednesdays at 12 and 3, and then it's all over Western Mass and Connecticut on the local public access channels. This is a part of the show where I always give a writing prompt, because the focus of my show is to talk to writers about what they're doing, why they're writing. But there's this other flip side where there's a lot of writers who were once like me and still like me, wondering, how do I write my story? How do I tell my story? And the goal of my podcast is to have different writers on, whether they're songwriters or screenwriters or keynote speakers or comics or poets or novel writers, fiction writers, memoir writers. And when you hear how they wrote their story, you might say, you know what? I think I could write like them. And you're going to rewatch that episode with them to find out how they did it. Who knows? Maybe you even reach out to them and say, hey, you want to have a cup of tea? Because I do that with a lot of them. And we go out, we have a nice cup of tea, and next thing you know, I have them on my show. So at this time, I just say at the end of the show, set your timer for about 10 minutes, pick up a pen, and start writing based on this prompt. And the prompt today is going to be a little mix of both of our guests. And one is, I want you to either write a story of 100 words based on a mysterious happening in your life, something that might have been mystical, magical, scary to you, maybe something happened as a child. Write on your computer, type it up, and see if you can come up with 100 words. Or come up with 100 things. I love this one. 100 things you could write about. Like, literally, who can't do that? Sit down and you're going to make a list. 100 things you could write about. 100 stories you have in your life. It might be from when I lost my first tooth to when I got married the third time. You know, you never know. There's so many different stories, although maybe it's just the first time you got married, but I don't know why I said third. Anyways, I want to say thank you so much for supporting this show. I want to thank Studio 954 for always, and Les for always being here to help me do what I'm doing because I love what I do. And I want to encourage you to support all the guests that come onto the show. Purchase their books. If they have podcasts, go to them, subscribe to them. And then, if you've read their books or seen their shows or whatever it is, write a review and share it with your friends, because the best way for all of us to get audiences is word of mouth. So please share with your friends. Word of mouth is the best form of flattery. And this concludes the 100th episode of Why Write. I have lots more exciting guests to come. Yay! I got balloons. I got more guests lined up for the next 100, so for those of you who are in studio, we got some lovely cupcakes to have, and we got balloons we can kick around, and there's some streamers that are sort of being popped.